Hey guys, how's it going? So, Anthony Joshua versus Oleksandr Usyk has been confirmed for September 25th of this year, I believe. And, I made a video on this about a month ago, basically discussing why personally believe that Anthony Joshua will beat Oleksandr Usyk. And my prediction was, or still is, AJ by stoppage. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's going to be like a full blown knockout, right? Like a KO, but I see AJ stopping Usyk, and from what I've seen, it's a lot of people sort of have the opposite opinion as I do, right? A lot of people are actually picking Usyk to win this fight. I mean, even like from what I've seen online, people are, even professional fighters are picking Usyk to beat Joshua and beat him quite comfortably. So in this video, I sort of just wanted to look at the other side of the argument and see if I agree or disagree with any of their points. Because, this is an interesting and unique fight stylistically, right? You know what I mean? There are a lot of unanswered questions about Usyk's fighting style at heavyweight, right? There's questions surrounding if AJ can deal with the skill set of someone like Usyk's. And I sort of just wanted to discuss that in this video. So, yeah, so I'll start off with one point. So people have been saying that, the reason one reason why AJ will lose this fight is because AJ's never fought someone as fast as Oleksandr Usyk in terms of hand speed. And I don't know if I agree with that point so much because, you know, Anthony Joshua, he fought Joseph Parker, right? And Joseph Parker in that fight did have fast hands, right? And AJ, he was able to beat him, right? I mean, yes, it was a decision, but AJ, he still beat him at the end of the day. And I personally thought that was the right decision, was to give the fight to AJ, right? Or the win to AJ. You know what I mean? I had him up in the fight, and yeah, I thought he won. Um, I guess you could say that Alexander Povetkin had good hand speed as well, but I mean, he was obviously a bit older at the time, right? So it was, he was obviously going to be a lot slower. Another example is Andy Ruiz Jr. However, I think with that fight, or those fights, the first one, obviously AJ lost, right? Um, and the second one, Ruiz didn't come into that fight in good shape. So I don't know if those are really good examples, but the Joseph Parker one is a good example of how, you know, AJ can deal with speed in a fight or someone else's hand speed in a fight. So yeah. So I don't know. In this fight, I don't think the speed, like obviously, maybe Usyk is slightly faster than Parker, but obviously Parker is bigger than Usyk, right? Um, you know what I mean, and taller as well, I think. So, I just think that the hand speed of Usyk is not really gonna have that much of an effect on Joshua. I mean, it will have like a bit of an impact, but I don't think it's gonna like, shock Joshua in this fight or anything. So, yeah. What was another thing? Oh yeah, another argument was that in past heavyweight fights, there have been cases of significantly smaller fighters going up against guys who are a lot bigger, um, a lot taller, and a lot more powerful, maybe. You know what I mean? And one example was David Haye versus Nikolai Valuev. And, I do agree with that in a sense, right? I agree that, a smaller fighter can still beat a bigger fighter, right? I mean, it's that old saying, it's not how big the fighter is, it's about how, big the fight is in them, right? Or something like that. But the thing is, I don't know, I feel like comparing this fight to Hay versus Valuev is a bit I don't know, unfair, I guess, in a sense. You know, value of versus Hay. I mean, Hay was a lot more skillful than value of. And value of wasn't that great of a boxer, right? He was only competent, right? He had basic boxing technique. It was more just his height and size and all that that helped him win fights, because David Hay was 6'3", while value of was like a 7-foot giant, right? I mean, that's why they called him the Russian Giant, right? That was his nickname. Well, with this fight, I just think, AJ, maybe even if he isn't as skillful as someone like Usyk, he still is skillful at the end of the day, right? And, if Usyk were to write off Anthony Joshua's boxing ability or overlook it, I think that would be a dangerous thing for Usyk to do, right? Because we've seen that AJ, he has good boxing fundamentals, right? He can sort of switch styles from, sort of outboxing his opponents from a long range to, fighting in a short range and, swarming his opponents with all these combinations and everything, right? So, like, it does make sense, right? I'm not saying Usyk is, it's impossible for Usyk to knock out AJ or stop him or anything like that. I'm just saying to compare it to a fight like Hay versus Valuev. I mean, Hay versus Valuev, that was basically size. That was basically size versus, skill, right? And obviously, David Hay being the most skillful or the more skillful fighter out of the two. I mean, he was able to beat him comfortably, right? All Hay had to really do was just watch out for, you know, um, Valuev's long reach and all that, right? Um, so yeah. What was another argument? Oh yeah, another argument was that, and this pretty much goes for any of AJ's fights at a high level, right? This is the same thing, argument for AJ versus Fury, AJ versus Wilder, all this. It's that, well, Ruiz Jr. was able to knock out or stop AJ, right? The short 6'2" fat Mexican was able to, stop the undisputed heavyweight champion, right? Which was Anthony Joshua. So imagine what Usyk is going to do, right? That's an argument I've heard as well. Guys, Oleksandr Usyk and Andy Ruiz Jr. are not the same fighter stylistically, right? Stylistically, Andy Ruiz Jr. is a come forward fighter. He's looks to get on the inside of you. He uses head movement. He, rushes towards you with all these like huge bombs, right? He's sort of like a Mike Tyson type of fighter. Obviously not as skilled as Tyson, probably. But, that's what his style consists of, right? Just, like pushing the pace, bringing the pressure to you, and he's going to make you feel as comfortable as possible. While Oleksandr Usyk is a guy, if he is going to get on in the inside of you, or on the inside of you, right? He's going to use technical, pressure to do that, right? Usyk is more of an outboxer rather than a swarmer like Ruiz is, right? And also, Andy Ruiz Jr. hits a lot harder than Oleksandr Usyk, right? I mean, we have yet to see, if Oleksandr Usyk is a powerful hitter at heavyweight. In my opinion, he isn't, right? Just basing his fight off the Derek Chisora fight, you know what I mean? Or basing his power off the Chisora fight. It's hard to really say that Usyk is a hard hitter, right? Considering he wasn't able to stop Chisora, right? So, I just think that stylistically Ruiz is a tougher matchup for AJ than someone like Usyk is, right? So, yeah, and also, we all know that, AJ, he schooled Ruiz in the rematch, right? So, there's that as well. So, yeah, I think that's all the argument. I mean, that's, most of the arguments, I think, for why Usyk is going to, why Usyk would beat Anthony Joshua. There's one I do agree with though, right? So just to be fair, there's one I do agree with. So I will say this: if Anthony Joshua fights Oleksandr Usyk the same way he fought Andy Ruiz Jr. in the second fight, then yes, he will lose, right? Joshua, he should not try to outbox the better boxer out of the two, you know? Because if he does that, he's going to find himself in all sorts of trouble, right? So he can't do all this stuff of like, oh, I'm going to, run around the ropes and try to fight like Sugar Ray Leonard, right? I'm not saying AJ, couldn't get away with it, right? I'm just saying, that wouldn't be the ideal fighting style to go into this fight with, right? So I do agree with that. However, I think AJ's smart enough to know not to do that, right? He's going to come into this fight. He's going to, walk down Usyk, in my opinion, right? Yes, Usyk will have moments of success, right? But I think, even if Usyk himself, tries to pressure AJ at some points, I just think that AJ, or Usyk, he's going to run into all kinds of problems. He's going to run into all these power punches by AJ. And I think that would be, bad for Usyk, right? So I just think, no matter where this fight goes, as long as AJ, is able to pressure Usyk every step of the way, then I think he could get the stoppage, right? Considering he had trouble fighting someone like Chisora, who, in that fight was a pressure fighter. So, yeah. That basically does it for this video. Look, I'm not saying that it's impossible for Usyk to win. He definitely can win. I'm just saying that, if I had to, pick a guy to win in this fight, I would pick AJ, right? A lot of people like to write off AJ, you know what I mean? I see people writing him off in this fight. They say, he's a gas tank, he's a glass chin, he's, all this, right? He doesn't know how to box. But, if you go look at his fights, AJ, he does know how to box, right? He's not a Nikolai Valuev who's, just a basic boxer, right? He has, good combinations, right? He has a great uppercut, you know what I mean? He has a good jab, right? He can switch styles. So I think, you can't write off AJ in this fight is all I'm saying, right? And obviously if you're picking AJ, you can't write off Usyk either, because Usyk does present maybe a stylistic matchup that to AJ that he's never seen before, right? I will say that one thing Usyk does bring to the table are the angles. AJ's never really fought anyone who's good at creating angles as Usyk is, so I think that could play a factor. But yeah, like I said, man, I just think AJ's got it. He knows what to do in this fight, I assume, right? As long as he goes into this fight with the right game plan, I think he should be able to, beat Usyk. He should be able to stop Usyk and all of that, right? But obviously he's got to, not underestimate Usyk at the same time. So, yeah. It's going to be a good fight, though. I can't wait for it. I got Joshua. It's not an easy fight for him, but it's, he's the guy I'm picking to win this fight. So, yeah. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think's going to win this fight? And yeah, that's going to do it for this. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a good day and take care.